Okay, welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Jason Waller, alongside my co-host, Hilary Roberts. Hilary, how are you doing?
I am fantastic. I love it. Had the best time at Race to Erase MS, giving away a scholarship in Jason Davis's name. And Cammie, Julianne went with me, and we had just a wonderful time. Saw people from last year, and of course, as you know, got to see Robert Shapiro and speak with Kathy Hilton, and it was a lovely time.
No, it seemed like a great event. It was awesome that we were able to provide that scholarship for somebody that's struggling with multiple sclerosis and co-occurring disorders. So people that don't know, actually the leading cause of death, besides the disease itself for multiple sclerosis, is actually, I believe it was suicide, right, Hilary?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that struggle with that disease that have trauma, mental health issues, and addiction. So we partnered up, and in remembrance of Jason Davis, my good buddy that passed away about a year and a half ago, it's in remembrance of him where we give the scholarship to somebody that's got MS and is struggling with either some form of mental health, suicidal ideations, and or addiction. So that was awesome.
Let me give a shout out to Jason. Yeah, because you're a great husband and a great dad, because you did not leave your wife's side, because you
I couldn't, you guys. My wife is about to pop. She is.
Her ankles are this big.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she is. It's any day. I'm waiting for the phone call. So, but it's glad that you went. Glad you're able to represent for us. And, Ashley's doing really good. I'm very excited. I'm going to have a little boy here any day now. So I'll keep you guys posted on that, though. So looking forward to it. But I know we got a special guest on here, Hill, and I want you to bring her on because I am dying to know. Prior to the show, she sensed a vibe about me, so I want to figure out what she's talking about here.
Our guest today has over 12 years experience in the mental health and wellness field. She's a certified life coach with extensive training and experience in several drug and alcohol facilities, eating disorder facilities, as well as women's mental health facilities. Please welcome Patti Gunstream, certified life coach and owner of Unearthed Wellness Center. Thank you so much, Patti, for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. It's so good to finally connect. I know we had a couple conversations prior to you being here and hearing everything that you do, and looking forward to learning more about that. But before we start, I want to go back to what we were talking about before we even get into the show. Hill, she looked over at me and I was like, do I seem like I'm calm? She goes, you don't seem. I don't know what it was. She's like, you don't seem calm, and I was like, okay. So Patti, you got to read me. What's going on?
Oh yeah. Okay.
You can be honest. Be honest. Be honest.
I think, for most part, I just feel wounds.
Really?
From little boy wounds.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. I feel like you're on a hamster wheel trying to prove yourself sometimes that you're enough, and it's exhausting. That's hard to carry.
I like that. That's good. That's powerful. You're not far off.
Okay, but now she has to read me, Jay. Okay.
I know. I read you the other. I know. I could feel you the other day when I was looking at pictures from the event.
Okay, so tell me.
I had asked Cammie. I'm like, okay, what is she like? Because I don't know you. I've never met you, and I'm like, all I feel is little girl wounds.
Oh, well, that would be accurate.
I don't. They're not good wounds either. Really deep ones.
Yeah, she's good. Some stuff happened to me when I was probably 15, 16 years old. That's when kind of the damage started happening.
Younger.
Oh,
really?
I knew you were going to say that. Oh.
Yeah, I've done a lot of, I don't want to make this show about this, but I've done a lot of work on that. And I've never was able to pull something up from when I was young. Maybe we have to have a session. I'm open to
likely.
it. I'm definitely open to exploring, 100%.
And I want a session too. Yeah, we have a very serious question for you, Patti.
Yes.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
We were talking about that just earlier. I think, when I was really little, I just wanted to be a mom and a wife. And then When my first son was born, he was born with a lot of medical issues, and so we were in the hospital once a month for 10 years. He's had 128 surgeries.
God.
And so, so being in the hospital environment all the time, I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a doctor. And so I really wanted to go into that, but that didn't work out. There was a lot going on in my personal life, and so I just needed to be with him. So I was a stay-at-home mom for several years, and then I fell into real estate. And so I was a realtor for 13 years. And once I started doing my own emotional work, that's kind of how I fell into this, just doing my own emotional growth work.
Yeah, so that brings up an interesting point. So correct me if I'm wrong, but along the way you had to go through your own personal healing process to get to where you're at. Do you mind kind of opening the door to help us get to why you do the work that you do today?
Sure. Okay, so I was married for 17 years. We were together for 20 years, and he, so my ex-husband now, but my husband at the time, is an addict alcoholic. And really abusive. And I didn't even know. And so it's kind of funny, how I really got into this work was I knew that I didn't have the power to fix him, so I needed someone else to do that. And so we ended up going to some marriage counseling and ended up in a 7-day intensive workshop. He went first, and then I went second. And so he went and did some work, and then a few months later, I went to the same workshop, and I went thinking, I don't really need to go. There's nothing wrong with me. I just need him fixed, and then I can be totally happy. And so I went to this 7-day intensive workshop, and they opened a whole can of worms.
Ooh.
Because I had, growing up, so my dad was killed on a family vacation when I was 12. God. And so we were all there, and I didn't know that I had abandonment issues or even like daddy issues, if you want to call them that, because he wasn't the one that decided to leave. He was taken from us. And I think like really looking back as an adult, back into that time when I was 12, I was very, very like young, mature wise. And sort of looking back at that, I watched my mom go through like becoming a widow at 42. And she was left with 3 teenagers. I'm the youngest, and I have 2 older siblings. And we didn't speak his name for like 5 years, my dad's name. It was like he was non-existent. And so what happened was...
Why is that?
I think because my mom felt like she needed to be strong for us. Like if she broke down, then it would make us sad.
Right.
And I think we felt the same for her. If she saw us feeling anything, then it was going to make her sad.
Got it.
And it was just unspoken. And so it was really strange. Now that I look back and I work with people that are dealing with grief, I'm telling you, we did not speak his name in our house for 5 years. Wow. And so eventually we started, making comments after that. But so there was my abandonment. And so 7 years later, my sister had married her high school sweetheart, and he was actually with us on vacation when my dad was killed. And so 7 years later, he was killed. And so it was like, I think for my mom and my sister and I, the men just left. My brother kind of shut down emotionally. Mm-hmm. And so my sister had moved out, my brother had moved out. It was just my mom and I. And I think I probably shut down. Like I couldn't really open up to anyone. I struggled with friendships, but I was like connected to the boys. Like anyone that liked me or gave me any kind of attention, I was all for it. So I had a couple boyfriends in high school, and then my ex-husband, we went actually to middle school and high school together. And so we didn't start dating until after high school. But like I said, we were married for 17 years. We have 3 boys. My oldest son that had all the medical issues is an addict. So he's an active addict right now. And so working, like going in and doing my work in this workshop, that's the can of worms they opened up. They actually threw me into my grief work.
So this all started though when you were 12 years old. And how old, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you entered into that first workshop?
33.
So you ended up for 21 years.
Never grieving my father or my brother-in-law.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It was all shoved down. So they opened this can of worms, and then I can't stop crying. And like, I thought I was weird. And I went into shame when I'd cry. I would cry when I was angry. I'd cry when I was happy. I'd cry when people confronted me. I'd cry when I had issues. My mom, for me, I don't know what it was like for my siblings, but for me, I think I was so strong and independent. My mom would quiet me. She would shush me. And so I lost my voice even when I was a little girl. So
when they opened this can of worms, what were some of the major things? I'm hearing you say, that there was abandonment issues, but like, what were some of these things that really started to were uncovered to help you kind of get on this path and this process where you ended up staying for a week, and kind of how that all unveil?
So they in this workshop, they basically made me relive the day that my dad died.
Wow.
So like moment after moment after moment. And I didn't see him, but my dad worked for IBM, and we were out there with a bunch of IBM families. And my brother was dating a girl. Her dad worked for IBM, and she had a younger brother who is one of my guy best friends now. They were all with my dad. The dads and the sons we were out dirt bike riding. They would take a father-son ride, and that's where it happened. A 16-year-old girl shot my dad. They were out target shooting. And so, yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a lot. So I didn't see it, but so they made me kind of relive that day, and that kind of opened up my, starting my grief process at 33 for my dad. So it was crazy.
Wow. So after you kind of did, again, obviously had to do a lot of work. I mean, 20 years of pushing stuff and sweeping it under the rug and going through that process. When was it that it clicked and you went, getting out of real estate, getting out of all this stuff that you did growing up, where you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to make this shift and I want this to become my passion, my motivation. This is what I want to do as a career.
Okay. So what happened was, after I did my workshop, about 2 years later, I continued going to this women's group that was like a therapeutic women's group. And they came and asked me if I would help staff the workshop. And so that was in 2006. And so they did 4 workshops a year, and I staffed everyone from 2006 to about 2015. So I have lots of training and experience with the work that you do in the workshop. Basically, there's a lot of, we do anger work, we do trauma work. It's an intensive workshop.
Right.
So when you come and staff, you kind of do your own work too.
Right.
Because you connect with certain participants, and sometimes it'll trigger you back into your own work. Mm-hmm. And then I think the women's group was really, really pivotal for me, though, because I was they held a mirror up to me. And I was pretty much a professional victim. I felt like the world had taken so much away from me that it needed to repay that. And so I had a lot of victim energy. Also in my personal life, I was abused mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so in working on like my own self-worth and self-esteem, I worked on that. I worked on my victim, and then codependency came into my life. And a funny story, my therapist gave me Codependent No More.
Yep.
And I started reading it, and I was like, this isn't me. This is my sister and her husband. And so I drove to my sister's house, and I knocked on her door, and I said, you have to read this book. It's about you. And she was like, no, thanks.
Right.
I'm good.
Right.
So I left it on her bench on her front door. And yeah, then my therapist ripped me a new one. She's like, no, you go get that book. And everywhere it says codependent, you put your name. And wherever it says addict, alcoholic, you put his name. And so I started reading that when I was like, oh, this is me. It fits.
Codependent No More.
Codependency was a huge piece of my work. And now that I'm running my own workshop, we spend a lot of time on codependency and boundaries. And
So I have a question though. I want to ask you, because trauma is so fascinating to me. And Hilary, I know we've talked about this a lot with trauma. How does this still affect your life though today? All the stuff that you've gone through, all the uncovering of the can of worms that you're talking about, like how does this, do you fully recover from it? Is it like addiction? Does it come back if you don't do what you need to do? Like, can you explain that for our listeners?
Yeah. When I was working with my therapist, like my dad's stuff would keep coming up. Like I had a high school friend that died at the same age my dad died.
Wow.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, wow, all this grief is coming up for me. So I went back in and I did some cleanup work. And so it was explained to me like, you have your core issues, but sometimes these branches grow off. And
right.
So it's not that you have to go in and work on that deep, intense core issue all the time, but you just got to go in and kind of prune the branches and clean it up. You don't have to go as deep anymore. Once you go into that deep core trauma work, you just kind of go in and clean it up. I went in like 4 times within those years of cleaning my dad's stuff up.
Love that analogy because that works for almost whether it's trauma. Definitely for addiction. Even looking at that, you always hear about having to go down to the bottom, but I love how you just described that.
Yeah,
it's actually really very beautifully put.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What are some of the solutions that you use for yourself? Like in what are some of the tools that you use today when you have things come up, or what do you give to people that helps you and helps them?
Okay. So I did a lot of anger work. And so I've incorporated that into my workshop.
What's anger work look like?
It's angry, it's loud, and it's ugly. It's just it's not fun because lots of stuff can come up. Yeah. And so I didn't think I was angry, so I didn't think I needed it, but I raged. When they took me into that emotional space, I went into a rage. And so that was really freeing. Lots of stuff came up for me. I felt like in that I was sort of a caged animal where I just was pacing back and forth, right? And then when they gave me permission and I gave myself permission to unleash, it was loud and it was ugly. So, but it was so freeing. So there was that. I also started learning like the dynamics of the relationships that I was playing out in all different facets of my life. I was a victim with my ex-husband, but I was in real estate, and I was like a pit bull. I was fierce at negotiating, and probably wasn't very nice sometimes, but it was like the only place that I could find any power. And so that kind of played out.
I want to even bring this back real quick too, because I want to get back on, going back to solutions. But like, I still am curious is what caused, like, what was the turning point of wanting you to become a life coach?
Okay. I remembered the question that you asked me. So can I go back and answer that? I think when I did my inner child work, it was so cathartic to me, because what happens is we have these wounds in our childhood, okay? And we create a set of tools, whether they're healthy tools or unhealthy tools. And what happens is if we don't heal those wounds, we carry those wounds and the tools into our adulthood. And the tools might have worked when we were little,
right?
But they don't work so well when we're adults. And that's where people really get stuck, is that they're using these old tools. And I'll give you an example. Say that there's a child growing up in a home and there's lots of addiction and lots of anger and chaos that comes with it, okay? Their tool set might be hiding and isolation. They go into their room because it's quiet and safe there, okay? So here's isolation as a tool. It works because it keeps them safe when they're little.
Correct.
But as an adult, when things go wrong or traumas happen and they want to isolate, that's not going to work for an adult. You can't isolate. You can't run from that. It's going to sit in that room with you.
Correct.
And to combat that isolation, you've got to go connect. That's where the healing is it's almost like that contrary action. And so I think that for me and my work, I grew up in a home, my parents loved me. I felt loved, I felt taken care of, but there was an emotional disconnect from both of them.
Right.
And I didn't feel like I was an important part of my family of origin growing up. And like my mom would always say, quit performing. But I didn't understand what that meant.
Right. And
it was almost like, when I look back, I'm like, was I doing like attention-seeking behaviors? Because I didn't like a whole lot of attention. I'm not comfortable in the spotlight. But there
was a point though when you were little though that you thrived off of the attention, right? Because you were saying with the boys and
that was more like teenage years where I like just needed to feel loved.
Got it. Yeah. After everything had happened.
Yeah. So, but when I was little, I think like there was something that I wasn't getting from my parents, my family of origin, and I think it was actual deep emotional connection. Because now that I know who I am as a woman, I know how to emotionally connect. It is innate in me. And I think it was hard for me when I was little because I wasn't getting that. And so I think what happens as an adult now, when I'm like triggered back into that little girl stuff where I don't feel important, because that's one of my core issues, is that I don't feel important. Like after my divorce, the men I dated, I must have like picked the busiest men in the world because they had all these priorities, right? And they were like drawn to me, and I was like, what is going on? And it was when a friend pointed out, she's like, look at the commonalities of your relationships and what you're attracted to. And the men that I was attracted to, I felt exactly like I did as a little girl because that wound was unhealed.
Right.
That's right.
And so once I started working on that part, loving myself, and, I thought I did, apparently I didn't. But it wasn't until like I started knowing that I was worthy of being loved, I was important, that's when sort of God brought this, I'm going to get emotional, this amazing man into my life that knew how to love me without being told. And I'm so blessed to have him in my life. He is my biggest cheerleader. He's my rock. He's my soft space to land. And he's just amazing.
That's so incredible.
But I wouldn't have attracted that until I did my work. And because I didn't think I was worthy of having someone like that in my life.
That's what you always hear, you're a product of your environment. And when you're naturally surrounding yourself with that type of those individuals, you're going to be attracting those types of people. And until the work is done, you're going to be attracting that negative behavior, versus when you do the work, you're going to have a different set of standards, morals, values. And that's where you're going to start to bring to yourself. Yeah,
because we as humans, we like what's comfortable and predictable.
Of course. Yeah, we don't like the uncertainty.
As messed up as it is.
Yeah, we don't like change, even though that's all great change precedes through chaos, right? Yep. I mean, and that's where it really happens. What a beautiful story. How long you been together with him now?
We've been together for 8 years. We got married 3 years ago.
So going back to when you started this journey in life coaching, he was around in the beginning stages.
I was already life coach. Well, I was in school to get my psych degree. I was doing real estate part-time because that was hard to juggle with school. And that's ultimately why I gave up real estate, was because I'd have an escrow calling me and I'd be taking a final. And they're like, you got to get these docs in. And I'm like,
right.
So I had already started a little life coaching practice. We were in a condo, and my first few clients would come into our spare bedroom. I made it into an office, and that's how I started.
Would it be fair to say that through, the accomplishments that you have made through your work is what's motivated you to want to be a life coach for others?
Yeah, I know that this is my purpose. It's my passion. This is what I was made to do. And I took my story. I think that the best healers are the ones that have the stories to help heal others. And so when I first started, I had this passion to help these women that were stuck in victimization, and to really help them start knowing their worth and find that inner power, so that they could recognize victimization and be able to actually pull themselves out of it themselves. That's the ultimate gain for someone that is in a lot of victim energy, is to not gather people around to help lift them up, but to actually be able to lift themselves out of it.
Wow. I love it. No, it's very apparent that this is something that you love, and it's really cool how you can get to the core of where your emotions and all those things stand. I mean, you got such an amazing awareness and acceptance for where you've gone, and an action to deliver it out, and to see where you're at today is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing.
So yeah, this is all very informative. If you were to give our listeners one action for the day, what would it be?
I think that when this is a tool that I've used, going back to my inner child work. I think that when you get triggered into your old wounds, whether it's abuse, neglect, whatever, chaos, go back and ask that little boy or that little girl what they need. If you listen, they will tell you. My little girl always tells me she needs connection. And so if I'm feeling left out, not invited to, the party or whatever, or, feeling down on myself, I can go back and ask my little girl, what do you need? And she 100% of the time always tells me, you need to go connect. And so I can grab the phone and call a friend or make plans with someone, and that pulls me out of that pain. Because I still get triggered. I still have to do work on myself as much as I've done. I've been doing work on myself since 2004.
That's so incredible. Good for you. Unbelievable. So if people
Yeah.
want to find out more about you and about the work you do, where can people find you?
So I have 2 offices. I have an office down here in Orange County. And then I actually have a whole wellness center up in Glendora. And that's Unearthed Wellness Center. And I have 2 spaces. I have some offices. I have another life coach that works with me. And then I have another one that is just an intuitive healer. She does meditations and Reiki. And so we kind of do mind, body, and soul. I have someone else that does some body work. And so
that's amazing. So, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of tools and resources there and a lot of great people. So people can go to unearthedwellnesscenter.com.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Unearthedwellnesscenter.com. Thank you for taking us on that journey with you and, by opening up and just being so vulnerable with us. And I know there's a lot of people who struggle and that have had a lot of damage and harm done, when they were younger, I mean, all the way through their life, and they don't know how to process or deal with it. And that's why they turn to drugs, suicide, other outlets, isolation. And it's amazing to have people that have a voice and come out and talk about this because it lets people know they're not alone and gives them hope. So I'm very grateful. And obviously now I got to schedule a session with you because I got to find out what the hell happened to me. I got to figure out what's going on.
I can take your inventory. I can take what
you already do take my inventory. I already know that.
I am.
No, I'm
going to totally tell you what's wrong with you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
thanks
really
for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yeah.
Thank you
100%.
so much.
Thank you.